really risen to a new level of visibility and respect within the organizations. And that's because of some of the accounting scandals that happened. So we're going to go through one quick case study to show where internal audit was able to bring one of these examples to light and help an organization see a significant issue that was going on inside. So if folks aren't familiar with WorldCom, this is one of the accounting scandals that brought about the Sarbanes-Oxley rules. And the quote here is actually from the former CEO who made a comment, who's really going to notice $9 billion. It gives you an idea of the size and scope of these organizations and the size and scope of the scandals that brought them down. So this particular scandal did come about during a routine internal audit. That year, the VP of internal audit noticed a suspicious transaction. It was a transaction it was a capitalization type transaction that in the past she had always seen being written up as an expense. So by capitalizing it rather than expensing it in the current period, WorldCom was basically able to hide those expenses and show profits where they normally would not have. This launched an investigation, and what came about was a $2 billion reserve had to be booked because of that inappropriate transaction. You'll see the last bullet here, we basically summarize. They almost got away with misrepresenting profits by about $7 billion. And then there's another $2 billion that's questionable about whether they were booking it properly or not. So it's up to a $9 billion scandal that came about because an internal auditor was paying attention to some of the changes in the business process. So now we'll walk through a little bit about who are the people that do internal audits. Internal audits are folks who have a real in-depth understanding of the business culture. You need to know your organization. It's really critical to success in this industry and also one of the fun things about it. Diversity of knowledge becomes very important, again, because you're not operating in that siloed environment. You need to understand a breadth of topics and how they interrelate to each other so that you can truly assess the impact of a break in one area and how it will flow through to other areas. We like to bring together very diverse teams. So when I look at my teams, any strength that I pick out is not a strength I want every player to have. In other words, I like to have on my teams a few folks who do have an accounting background and maybe have spent some time in public because they can bring that CPA perspective. I also like to have folks who are what I call true professional internal auditors, folks who've done their whole career there, understand the methodologies of best practice and how it might differ from financial statement audits. Absolutely want to have folks who have operations backgrounds, IT backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, folks who can really delve into the nitty-gritty of what the business is doing and understand the risks introduced by that. Internal audit can also be an amazing resource to management. We often have management come to us as they're launching a new initiative and ask for our thoughts on how to improve the control environment, how to structure it, what are the risks that we might see from our internal audit lens that they might not pick up in their analysis, and how can we help them prepare for or mitigate those risks. Now, Anthony mentioned he is an IT auditor, and hopefully we've got some folks with technology backgrounds. IT audit is an area that has completely taken off in the world of internal audit. And I will say if there are folks with that background on the phone, you are well positioned to take your career in whatever direction you like. With the increased automation of financial functions, as well as the increased use of mobile devices, cloud computing, internet, so much of our business risk today is tied to technology. Therefore, so much of what internal audit does is focused in that area. The next few slides get us through a little bit more of the day-to-day, what we do in internal audit. And I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because you're really not going to understand it until you get out there and do it yourself. But it all starts with looking and saying, what are the risks to my business? So once I understand the areas that that I might potentially want to audit, I need to know the risks around those areas. Then I need to take those riskiest, and those are my priorities. That's where I want to focus my time and my energy. Once I get focused on those areas, I want to dig into each of them and say, what are the controls we have that are relevant to these risks? What are the areas I really need to look at? And that's how I end up with my audit plan. The different types of audits we do, you'll notice bullet 2 here, financial audits. That can overlap quite a bit with our friends in the external audit world and their financial statement audits. And in fact, you'll often see your financial statement auditor placing reliance on an internal audit group in some of these areas. But we're also looking at operational audits to see if the resources are being used efficiently and effectively. We're looking at compliance audits, especially in some of our highly regulated industries. So for myself in banking, this is a huge amount of my time. My colleagues in the healthcare industry as well spend quite a bit of time on regulatory compliance. And then the internal controls around any of these business functions. The IT audits I've mentioned, there's several different flavors of IT audits. They can be anything from this penetration or network vulnerability testing. Some of that's done through tools that do scans of your systems, others done by hand. We've got folks who basically do what they call the social, and now I'm forgetting this because I'm not a technology person. Anthony, what is it when you do the social engineering? Maybe I've lost him for a moment, but they'll actually try to basically hack into a system, which is pretty fun. And then we do your basic, we'll look at the data, we'll look at the applications, and see how that, see if those are all tightened up appropriately to safeguard the information. So some of the challenges of being an internal auditor, and I'm just doing a time check. I've probably got about 7 minutes left, so I hope you'll all bear with me rattling on here. Some of the challenges of internal audits: do your stakeholders understand what you're doing? What do they expect from you? Is it in line with what you're trying to accomplish? You have to be able to work with lots of different people because you'll have your stakeholders at various levels, from your peer level all the way up through senior management. You'll also have your other internal auditors. You might have to deal with your external auditors as well as regulators. There's frequently complicated financials and regulatory requirements that you need to understand. You need to be able to communicate at all these different levels, and you need to deliver things on time with an audit plan. So some of the challenges, that prioritization I talked about: what are my riskiest areas? Where do I spend my resources? What are the skills that I need to have, and how do I keep those skills up to date? So I mentioned earlier the Institute for Internal Auditors. Anthony and I are very active with that group, and that's really how we keep our skills up to date, is by going to their sessions and networking with their constituents. Regulatory requirements: you need continuous training to stay up to date there. You need to maintain your relationships with management, maintain your independence, but also keep relationships there, and keep up to date with the resources you need. Make sure you're continuously bringing the best and the brightest into your internal audit organization. Further in your career, not something that you need for an entry into it, but as you further your career, you might choose to go for some additional certifications. The Certified Internal Auditor is put out by the IIA, or Institute for Internal Auditors. Great foundational certification. CPA, I'm sure you're all familiar with. With IT auditors, we frequently look for these CISAs. Fraud examiners, a wonderful way to take that fraud aspect and look at controls. If you go into government work, the government auditing professional is very important. And the financial services auditor is just one example of an industry-specific certification. And these are some of the associations that issue those certifications and provide the training and networking around them. So now we get to the point with, why would you want to do this? And this touches on a lot of the things I find really exciting about it. One is the opportunity to work with all different clients in all different industries. If you go into a professional services environment, it's a very quick way to move around and get a feel for different types of organizations and different industries to see what the right fit is for you long term. So if you're sitting there thinking, still not sure what I want to be when I grow up, this might be a great path to take a look around and get an idea of what's out there. You also get exposed to different methods and approaches to auditing because different teams might take different approaches, especially if you're in a co-sourcing world where you might be in professional services, but you spend some time embedded into a corporate audit team. You very quickly start to interact with senior management and with the board. So fairly early in your career, you're getting this executive level exposure that in other career paths might take a lot longer to reach that point. Again, going into the professional services world, but even in the corporate world as well, you tend to travel a lot, which can be really exciting. So you're seeing different countries, different cities, working with different folks, and you've got a new and different challenge every year. And of course, that also brings with it your frequent flyer miles and your Marriott rewards and all those things, which I've taken lots of vacations on over the years. Things that folks sometimes find challenging. So we mentioned the variety of work. Some folks really aren't as excited about that variety of work. They don't like to operate out of their comfort zone, and they want something a little bit more stable. In that case, internal audit can be a challenge. It's also very deadline driven and a little bit of hurry up and wait too. So I'll give an example. This is quarter end. I've got a client I'm working with where we've got 18 reports that we need to get out this week. And by the way, those 18 reports need to go through a quality cycle, and they need to get feedback from the stakeholders. So we're really crunching hard this week to hit that end-of-week deadline, but we are dependent on others as well. So it takes a certain personality type to balance that. In professional services, so at a firm, but more and more so in corporate as well, internal audits are accounting for their hours. And that's to make sure that we understand the cost of everything we're doing. That level of accountability really can put pressure on some folks. For others, it's really not an issue, though. Working and traveling alone happens from time to time, and you need to be confident to get out there and hit the road by yourself. And then all of a sudden realizing that, gee, I've got vacation time. Wouldn't it be great to spend a week where I don't pack my suitcases? That can be a little different mindset than some of your friends might have who've got more standard corporate jobs. So what are the things that really make somebody successful in this field? The number one we start with is that being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So going out, trying these new areas, new industries, new subject matters, new types of audits, and saying, I can't wait to learn this on the fly. That's a sign of somebody who's going to do very well in this profession. Loving to learn from those around you. It is an environment of continuous learning because of this change. You're often learning in the field as you're working, so you want to ask really good questions to your business stakeholders and your teammates so that you can learn as quickly as possible. So those are all our prepared comments today, and it looks like I did fairly well on my targeted timing. So now I hope you all have lots of questions for Anthony and for me, and we can keep this as an interactive dialogue for the last 20 minutes. So Jeff, have we got anything lined up?
We do, and Erin, your timing was perfect, by the way. Well done. You got it right here at 20 minutes till. So let's do this. We'll take the rest of the time to just be interactive between you and Anthony and myself, and I'll fire off some questions to you. Let's see here. Oh, and as I'm kind of cycling through the questions, I thought just to make a couple of takeaways that I just thought were really remarkable. One, and this is similar to yesterday, as you start to see, and I'm speaking specifically to the students, asking yourself the questions about, what you prefer and where your interest lies is really going to help in identifying the right career path for you. This is a remarkable career path, and it is really exciting stuff. I love the fact that you said that you can get senior level exposure to boards and senior executives and a holistic view of a company. What a fantastic way to launch a career. And and certainly a major advantage of taking this career path. That was a big takeaway for me. So a lot of the questions that we've got are about qualifications and things like that. A couple of points I wanted to make before we even jump into this is experience things like this. Many of these employers that we'll cover offer internships in this field, and the best way to really get exposure is an internship if you can find one. And so the first question I'll ask is how do we find opportunities in entry level, post grad or internship entry level internal audit? And I think the IIA is a great place to start. Obviously, College Frog is a resource for you as well, and another resource that you might want to check out is Indeed.com. They're a job board that covers a lot of different sectors and is a friend of College Frogs. I have a good number of questions, but Anthony or Erin, just to answer that first question, how do we find opportunities? Any other suggestions that you have besides the IIA, College Frog, Indeed, some of the major job boards, things like that?
Well, at risk of stating the obvious, I think looking at your local college job board as well. So we'll frequently post internships at the colleges where we do our full-time recruiting upon graduation as well, because it's a good way for us to preview the candidates and maybe get someone early in their school years that we would want to work with full-time when they graduate. So I think that's a fantastic resource, and certainly with larger companies, you can go out and check their job boards as well because they may have internship postings on their job boards.
Yeah, good stuff. It sounds like the primary hires in this category are going to be the professional services firms like Grant Thornton and similar large firms that have an audit capacity, as well as you may see some corporations as well who have internal audit groups that have an internship or entry-level rotation. So be on the lookout for those. Okay, so we've got a ton of great questions here, and I'm going to just throw them out as we go here. So interesting question here is what's the dynamic, the working dynamic, Erin, between external and internal auditors? Any comments on that?
Sure. External auditors and internal auditors typically have a strong relationship, particularly the folks in internal audit who work with the financial reporting cycle. So hopefully I'm not saying things that folks know really well. I hope I'm making good use of your time. But since Sarbanes-Oxley came into effect, when you have a public company audit, the SEC requires that you issue an opinion on the internal controls if you are part of the external audit team. And that includes both business controls and technology controls. So not speaking of the internal audit folks in the corporation just yet, but speaking with the internal audit practice at the accounting firms, we will very often partner with the external audit teams to help them test those internal controls. With technology, it is almost always the technology internal auditors who are also partnering with the external audit teams to get a handle around those technology controls. And then some firms will also use the internal auditors to supplement their business process testing around internal controls. Now, in addition to that, the external auditor at a corporation will partner with internal audit at that corporation, whether it's in-house, co-sourced, or outsourced. And they will often have the internal audit function at the corporation perform that internal controls testing, which they're required to do for management's opinion anyway, and then the external audit will leverage on that work. So the clients I have where we've got that relationship set up, we'll typically start out the year. If it's a 12/31 filer, it's usually sometime in this month that we'll have our first sit-down with management and the external audit team, and we'll all lay out our schedules for the year so that we can line things up. Then we'll often go on our process walkthroughs together, and those process walkthroughs are where you go out and you sit with the business folks and you observe them. So that's how you really learn what they do and learn your business. So you sit with them and observe them doing their work to make sure that you understand where their controls are and how things have changed. Very often the internal auditor and external auditor will do that together to save the business from having to do it twice. And then throughout the year we'll be sharing information. In addition to that, most external audit teams ask to see the internal audit reports that are relevant to their audit opinion, because they want to understand, are there things that management already knows might be weaknesses that we should know about so that we can plan perhaps some extra external audit procedures around them. So it's really a dialogue that happens all year round.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
go ahead, Anthony.
I have exactly the same experience with my work. For a lot of the community banks that I work with, we'll be doing IT audits throughout the year for their own benefit, but then come year end, the financial auditors or external auditors will ask to look at all of our work, so then they can place reliance on the work that we've done, rather than, as Erin said, going back through it all again and costing the company a lot more money.
Interesting. Well, we'll take another question with that being said. So this is related more to a career direction. I've passed the CPA exam, and I graduate with an MS in accounting this May. Will passing the CIA exam increase my chances of getting a job in internal audit? That being said, I don't have any experience in internal auditing. So maybe talk about your perception of the CIA exam in terms of making a candidate viable.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, congratulations on passing that CPA, and particularly on passing it before you even graduate and get that field experience. That, regardless of what your next step is, that will be a wonderful tool to have in your toolkit. In terms of taking the CIA, it certainly helps. It helps to differentiate you against other applications as you're applying. So I think it would be a positive to you to go ahead and take it. However, I would tell you it's not something I typically expect of a fresh college grad. So having your CPA exam passed, having shown an interest in internal auditing and internal controls, I think that in of itself makes you a strong candidate. So if it's an interest and you're really set on the internal audit career path, it could be a great chance to take it, especially now while you're still in college and studying mode. Because as someone who's 20 years out of school, I can tell you that with each passing year, taking a test becomes harder and harder. But it's not something you should feel like you need to pressure yourself to do in order to be appealing as a first-year internal auditor. You'll also want to speak with whatever organization you're looking to go to in your internal audit path. If you go into internal audit with an accounting firm, they can likely find ways for you to get your public accounting hours so that you can turn that from just CPA exam pass to full-fledged CPA. And they might do that through having you do rotations on external audits during busy season. They might do it by having you do other types of attestation reports, like your SSA 16 or some of the SOC reports. Or they might do it, there's certain types of internal audits that those internal audit hours can count towards your CPA. So that's a bit of unsolicited advice I'd give you is if you've gone to the trouble to get the master's in accounting and pass the CPA exam, I would strongly suggest whatever career path you pick, you make sure it is one that can get you those external audit hours so that you can become a full-fledged CPA.
Yeah, I think you're right on, and I was going to say there's actually kind of a little bit of a follow-up that is asked along the same lines. What do you suggest for a current college student interested in internal audit to look for specific classes that would be applicable to the job? Erin, are there particular classes that the students who want to take this career path and are serious about it that they should absolutely be taking?
There's not just one career path or course curriculum that's best for internal audit. So it's tough to give just one set answer there. I think, as we mentioned earlier, we look for a variety of backgrounds. There's two paths you can take with an internal audit. There's the process path or the technology path. Many folks who come to us try to get a background in both so that they can be more fungible as auditors and do some technology and some process. So we'll often hire folks who have a degree in business and technology at the same time. And that helps with that understanding of the overlap as well, where you've got a business process that relies on a technology control. But I would suggest that as a minimum, you do get your basic accounting courses, because regardless of what type of auditing you need to do, it's still important to understand what is the books and records impact of that. And it's a good idea to have some basic technology classes too, because even if you don't want to go down that technology auditing path, it's just such a big part of our world these days.
And Anthony, I know that last piece that Erin just mentioned, the technology, it certainly doesn't hurt to have that as part of your academic background. It sounds like you work in that field as well relative to IT. Any comments from you about the importance of having some IT background and making yourself attractive as an audit employee candidate?
Yes, definitely. I think it's very, very beneficial to have done some of it at university, but equally it is something that you can be taught. I wasn't an IT auditor until I moved over to the States in 2010, and I've been developing those skills since then. So although I think if you have the opportunity to study it, I would jump at it. But if it's something that you haven't had the opportunity to do, and you're worried that may stand against you, I don't think that's the case either. So yeah, my advice would be definitely look into it and take any opportunities you get. But we can train you when you arrive. It's getting a grip on the terminology and the kinds of the ways that applications, databases, operating systems fit together. If you have that as a basic understanding, the rest of it can be taught to you, on a piecemeal basis as we require it.
Fantastic. So it'd be great to have it in school, but you can also be taught that as you get experience. Another question that is along the same lines is we have an attendee who wants to get into oil and gas internal audit specifically. He says through one of the big four, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase the question, but I know that in public accounting, some of the general advice that I've been that we've seen been given is to sort of start out as a generalist, get exposure to the career in general, and then begin to specialize. For this student who's interested in oil and gas, and I'm sure there's other students who might be interested in particular industries, what is your take on kind of starting out as a generalist then specializing, or is it best to, if you really have an interest in one industry, to begin there? I'm curious if you have any opinions on that.
So if you've got a strong passion, I say absolutely pursue that passion. Most of the firms will hire folks with the assumption that at the associate level where you enter, they will place you cross-industry where they've got a need. And so best way to target that then to your area of passion or interest is to get to know some of the managers and senior managers in that industry group at your firm and make sure that they're placing you on their engagements. Other good way to do that is just geographically. Make sure you get situated where that industry is a heavy industry. So if oil and gas is your passion, I hope you are looking at the Houston area or somewhere around there, because that's where the business need and the business focus of that really will be. So that's your best chance of success at specializing right away. I think that, in my experience, that tends to be the exception rather than the norm. I think most folks coming out of college, though, tend to enjoy that generalist route so that they can really try out a few different professions, or a few different industries, I should say, and find the one that really speaks to them, and then continue to to march along in that line in the industry that they like best. I don't know that I've seen any great advantage professionally in terms of how fast their career goes to folks who specialize right away or are generalists right away. I've seen folks do equally well with both approaches. So I'd say only specialize if it's a true passion of yours. Otherwise, be open to whatever catches your eye as you're going along.
More of a fun question is for each of you, what is the most fulfilling part for you personally in working in internal audit?
So Anthony, I've been hogging the microphone. Why don't I let you go with that first?
I think for me, I get a real kick out of training the new staff that we come in and outlining, how we do the work, why we do the work, and the benefits that we can provide to our clients. But on top of that, I think my real favorite, and this happens quite rarely, is when you explain a potential IT problem to a client along the lines of, given your level of access, you have the capacity to pay yourself millions and millions of dollars and no one would ever know because you can delete all the records. And you see their eyes light up and you say, but now that we know that, I'm going to have to change it.
That's outstanding. Erin, what about you?
So I'd say my favorite part is just the ever-changing environment. So working with all the different companies, all the different stakeholders, different industries, different business problems. I gave away my age earlier when I think I made some comment about 20 years ago. But I can tell you that for 20 years straight now, I've not stopped learning and not stopped getting exposed to new areas. So that's definitely my favorite part.
Well, we have a student who'd asked, what do firms look for good candidates in terms of characteristics or experience? But I'll kind of flip that a little bit. Earlier you said one of the prerequisites is you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable, which I thought was an outstanding statement. But speak about, I know that both of you are involved in recruiting. What are the either technical or non-technical elements that Grant Thornton looks for a good candidate in this space?
So I'll speak for myself and then I'll pass it over to Anthony, because I think the technical asks in the IT audit world are a little bit stronger than the technical asks in some of the process. When I'm looking for a college grad candidate, an entry-level associate, I'd say any of the technical know-how, to be honest, for me is a nice to have. So I do enjoy seeing folks who have accounting backgrounds or have done internships in accounting. I am happy when I see folks who have taken operational classes as well, so they understand the process that leads to those end numbers on your financials. So those are very nice, but to me, I feel like that's also very trainable. So I look more for attributes of the person. I look for somebody who is agile, who can operate in a changing environment and is comfortable with that change. I also look for someone who has shown a history of taking ownership and leading things. I mentioned earlier you start to get exposed to senior levels of management and boards very much earlier in your career than you might in other paths. You also end up owning pieces of the engagement or the assignment much earlier. So you might find yourself 1 year into your job, you're a second-year associate, and all of a sudden your senior that you're working for says to you, great, this year you're going to own these 2 audits, and by the way, I've just assigned an associate 1 and an intern, and you're responsible for making sure that they do their work well also. That's going to happen to you very quickly in this career. So folks who are used to that and like to take leadership and be responsible for what they're doing, those are some of the most important attributes to me. I don't know, Anthony, what are your thoughts?
I would definitely agree with all of that. I think the non-technical side is most important for me, even in the IT world. I think if you're joining us to be a network penetration specialist or a database management specialist, then obviously we'd want to see that you have some kind of experience there. But as Erin says, that a lot of the technical stuff we can teach you, and we want to teach you to do it our way and to our standard and that sort of thing. So if you've been in internal auditing before and you have one mindset and you're not willing to change, then that's not going to work for us. But for me, yeah, it's all about the non-technical stuff. You need to be able to hear a problem, understand a problem, explain the problem back to other people, and then think about what the solutions to the problem are. And if you can't do those things in a well-structured, well-presented manner, verbally, written, or through a presentation, then that's going to be a problem. But equally, you need to have a very detail-orientated perspective. You need to be, as Erin says, committed to your section, but you can't have any little mistakes. Obviously, over time, you're going to get better at that, and initially everyone has these, but that's really what we're looking for. People who have a commitment to quality, they're great communicators, and they're detail-orientated.
So Jeff, I think we're pausing to put it back to you. I'm looking at the time, and we've probably used up all the time folks had planned on. So should we be wrapping this up now?
Absolutely. I think I just realized my phone was on mute because I was trying to make sure I wasn't talking over Anthony. Why don't we do this? We'll wrap up with one quick last question, and then I'll finish things up. We had such an amazing list of questions. I think we had 30 or 40, so we're trying to combine them. But along the lines of Anthony's answer, and Anthony, I'll start with you, and Erin, feel free to chime in. You just talked about what you're looking for. Briefly, what are the firm's expectations, your firm's expectations of a new hire out of college? What are the kind of the key bullet points that a new hire in internal audit, would be expected of them? You mentioned some of the soft skills, but what's the, maybe a day in the life like?
Sure. So as a new hire, we're expecting you to try more than anything else. We're not expecting miracles, but you'll probably be taken out to clients very early on. You'll be involved in meetings. We want people who can pay attention, can really take an interest in what's going on, and learn quickly as we go. There's always going to be people who are more senior to you out there with you who will train you and explain exactly what it is that you're expected to do. But for your first few months, you're going to be out on site. You're going to be potentially interviewing people to find out more information. You're going to be given a whole stack of evidence to go through to make sure that people are following the process as we've had it explained to us. And then you may be involved in potentially writing the report or feeding back on the information to the client. If you tested one particular area and you've discovered that there's either a fundamental flaw or some minor discrepancies, we might ask you to present that back to management. So I think right from the start, you're always going to have support, but you're going to be expected to hit the ground running.
And Erin, you can have the last word on that. Anything to add?
So I think Anthony covered it very well. So I'm going to take the question and flip it a little bit to answer the question of what do you do to make yourself successful your first year out in your job? And I think this holds true to just about any job, not just internal auditing. And to me, there's two really important things to keep in mind. One is that success and reputation builds upon itself. So your first few weeks at your job, maybe even your first few months, most of what you're asked to do, it's going to be pretty simple stuff. It's going to be fundamentals. People want to get to know you first before they trust you with the complicated stuff. Really important you do that simple stuff well. So don't say, oh, this is easy, whip it off, hand it in, it's got typos, it's got basic formula errors, anything like that. Take even the most basic things you do and take them seriously, because then if people see you doing that basic stuff really well, that's how you're going to get a strong reputation, get more challenging work, and really become a superstar. So I think that's point number one. And point number two is never be afraid to ask a question. Folks would much rather answer that question and teach you and have you learn and do it right from the start than have you go down a wrong path and then have to correct it later. So absolutely never be afraid to ask a question. But once you do, remember that answer and keep applying it. because you don't want to be asking that same question twice. So I think those are the two pieces I'd say of just fundamentals across any job to help be successful in that year one.
I just completely agree with those points, all of them, about how to start out and asking a question and showing an eagerness to learn. No one expects you to start knowing every answer. You have a credential that means you're capable of learning. So working hard and asking those questions and building relationships are wonderful ways. That's actually a perfect segue into the session tomorrow, and you can see on the screen we have 3 more webinars throughout the week, and tomorrow's is called Starting Strong, and it speaks exactly to the point that Erin was just making. What are some things you could do in the first few days of your internship or entry-level position that could set you up to really have a remarkable career? I think we couldn't have said it better ourselves, Erin, so thank you. Couple of pieces as we wrap up here is one, I think it goes without saying that Anthony and Erin work for a phenomenal organization in Thornton, and if you have any interest in internal auditing careers, you should definitely check out their careers page at Thornton, and there's an N in Thornton.com. And also, to learn more about the IIA, check out theiia.com. This is a phenomenal organization that represents the audit community. And by the way, we'll be sending up a follow-up email with those web addresses as well. And you'll see that we got cut off on the slide here, but if you want to register for any of these further webinars this week, you can just go to www.meetthefirmsweek.com. Erin and Anthony, this has been fantastic. It's been eye-opening for me, and I know it's been eye-opening for students. The number of questions we had so many we couldn't even field them all. We did the best that we could, but there was an outstanding session. And I thank you so much for your time and insight here, and we just appreciate this, especially what is I'm sure a very busy time of year. And lastly is that this webinar, as well as all the other webinars, will be available for replay on our YouTube channel. We're going to post them to our channel towards the beginning of next week and send an email out to everybody letting you know where you can find them and how to access them. So with that, Erin and Anthony, we thank you so much. That was a fantastic session. And thank you, everyone on the phone, for being a part of this, and thanks for participating in Meet the Firms Week. So we'll wrap the call up now, and everybody have a great day. Bye now.